Red Zone, Book 1, Wipeout Squad Audiobook Series.
Chapter 11, The Mindbender and Parasites. The North Passage sloped upward at a gentle incline, emergency lighting flickering overhead in irregular patterns. Steele's HUD struggled to maintain a stable timestamp, flickering between hour 12:03 and hour 12:17 before finally settling on hour 12:09. The temporal anomalies from the junction chamber were fading, but their effects lingered like a migraine. "Anyone else feel like we just lived through an hour we can't remember?" Breach asked, checking his remaining ammunition. 3 rounds. He'd gone from demolitions expert to dead weight in terms of firepower. "The psionic interference collapsed local time," Wolf explained, his scanner still showing elevated readings. "We experienced temporal compression. Minutes felt like seconds, or we skipped forward entirely. The human brain isn't designed to process nonlinear causality." "Great," Hammer rumbled. "So we might have done things we don't remember. Fought battles that didn't happen, or did happen and we forgot." "Something like that," Wolf confirmed grimly. Steele pushed the disturbing implications aside and focused on the tactical situation. His HUD's mapping system showed they were approaching what looked like a loading dock, a large open area where the complex would have received equipment and supplies before the fall. The passage was widening, walls transitioning from maintenance corridor to industrial architecture. "Stitch, status?" Steele asked, glancing back at the medic. Stitch moved with fluid precision, the combat stimulant still driving enhanced performance through his system. But Steele noticed the medic's hands trembling slightly when he wasn't actively using them, and his pupils remained dilated to an unnatural degree. "Functional," Stitch replied. "The stim's keeping me sharp, but I can feel it burning through my system. Maybe 3 more hours of peak performance, then I'll crash hard." 3 hours is 3 hours more than we had, Steele said. "Can you perform medical procedures if needed?" "Already planning to. Breach's shoulder needs proper attention, and I want to check everyone for infection progression." Stitch pulled out his medical scanner, studying the readouts with a frown. "Boss, I'm seeing elevated biomass readings ahead. Lots of organic material in a concentrated area." "Define lots," Deadeye said, his rifle sweeping the passage ahead. "Enough that it's registering as a small building's worth of tissue. Could be mutant nest, could be something worse." They approached the loading dock entrance cautiously. The massive rolling door was partially open, stuck halfway up its tracks. Through the gap, Steele could see the dock itself, a cavernous space, easily 50 meters across. Loading platforms on each side, ancient cargo containers stacked in haphazard configurations. And in the center, standing perfectly still, was the Mindbender. Steele had seen the intelligence briefs on this mutant type, but nothing prepared him for the reality. The creature was roughly humanoid, but its skull had expanded to 3 times normal size, a bulging, translucent dome that pulsed with visible neural activity. Its eyes were enormous, bulging from sockets that could barely contain them, and they tracked the team's approach with frightening intelligence. "Contact," Steele whispered, raising his fist. "Mindbender, center position, nobody move." "Boss," Deadeye's voice was tight, "I'm reading metal all around us, rebar in the walls, structural supports, even the containers. If that thing can move metal telekinetically?" The Mindbender's eyes flared with pale blue light. "Down!" Steele threw himself flat as a cargo container exploded outward, releasing a shotgun blast of nails, screws, and metal fragments. The improvised shrapnel screamed past where they'd been standing, embedding into the concrete walls with enough force to punch through armor. "Telekinetics confirmed," Wolf shouted, scrambling for cover. Steele rolled behind a loading platform as more metal objects began to levitate throughout the dock. Hammers, crowbars, sections of chain link fencing, all of it rising into the air and orbiting the Mindbender like a tornado of blades. "Spread out," Steele commanded. "Don't give it a clustered target." The team scattered. Hammer charged left, his ceramic armor sparking as nails ricocheted off the plates. Breach went right, diving behind a forklift. Deadeye found elevation on a stack of containers, his empty rifle useless, but his enhanced vision critical for spotting attacks. Stitch pulled Wolf toward a concrete support pillar, protecting the scientist. The Mindbender raised one elongated arm, and the orbiting metal responded. A wave of nails launched toward Hammer like a living thing, each projectile guided by psionic force. The big man brought his sledgehammer up in a defensive sweep, batting away dozens of the projectiles, but more got through, punching into his shoulder guard, his thigh plate, finding gaps in the armor. Hammer's hit, Breach called out, multiple penetrations. I'm good, Hammer roared back, though blood was already seeping through the compromised seals. Takes more than nails to stop me. Steel tried to line up a shot with his carbine, but the Mindbender was protected by a shield of levitating metal, a constantly shifting barrier that intercepted any line of fire. Every round he fired was deflected or absorbed by the telekinetic defense. We can't get a clean shot, Deadeye reported from his elevated position. That metal shield is too dense. Then we overload it, Steel decided. Breach, you got anything that explodes in that vest? One fragmentation grenade, been saving it for special occasions. This qualifies. On my mark, throw it high, let gravity do the work. When it detonates, the shrapnel will force the Mindbender to expand its telekinetic field. That's when we shoot through the gaps. That's a lot of assumptions, boss, Breach said, but he was already pulling the grenade. You got a better plan? Nope. Mark when ready. Steel watched the Mindbender's pattern of movement. The creature was methodical, systematic, using its telekinetics to isolate each squad member, testing defenses, probing for weaknesses. It was learning, adapting, just like every other mutant on this cursed planet. Mark! Steel shouted. Breach's grenade arced high, sailing over the levitating metal shield. For a moment, Steel thought the Mindbender would simply catch it telekinetically, but the creature's attention was divided, managing its defensive shield, coordinating attacks on multiple targets, maintaining the nail swarm. Even psionic multitasking had limits. The grenade detonated 6 meters above the Mindbender's position. The explosion sent hundreds of metal fragments in every direction. The Mindbender's eyes flared brighter as it tried to catch the shrapnel, its telekinetic field expanding outward like a bubble. For one critical second, its defensive shield thinned. Now! Steel fired his remaining rounds through the gap, saw them punch into the Mindbender's bloated skull, saw black ichor spray. Deadeye threw a knife from his elevated position. No ammunition left, but a blade was still a blade, and the weapon buried itself in the creature's exposed eye. The Mindbender shrieked, a sound that existed half in Steel's ears and half in his mind. Its telekinetic control shattered, and the orbiting metal crashed to the floor in a cacophony of ringing impacts. It's down! Breach started to move from cover, then froze. Wait, boss, you hear that? Steel heard it. A sound like rain on a metal roof. Soft, persistent, growing louder. Movement! Deadeye's enhanced vision locked onto the cargo containers. Oh God, boss, the containers. They're full of... The containers burst open. Larvae poured out like a living flood. Thousands of them, each one the size of a man's thumb, pale and segmented with mandibles that clicked in unison. They moved in swarms, flowing across the dock floor like water, and where they touched metal, it began to dissolve. Parasites! Wolf shouted, his scanner going crazy. Parasitic larvae! They're acid-based feeders. They'll eat through anything organic or synthetic. The swarm reached Hammer first. The big man tried to shake them off, but the larvae were already crawling up his boots, finding gaps in his armor seals. Their mandibles worked with horrifying efficiency, chewing through reinforced ceramic like it was paper. They're on me! Hammer's voice carried panic. The first time Steel had heard the unshakable soldier sound afraid. I can feel them. They're eating through the suit. Breach, fall back, Steel ordered, seeing more larvae surging toward the demolitions expert's position. But Breach was too slow. His wounded shoulder limited his mobility, and the larvae caught him mid-retreat. They swarmed up his legs, covering his armor in a pale, writhing mass. He screamed, not in fear, but in pain, as the creatures found the gaps in his damaged suit seals. "Breach is compromised," Deadeye called down. "They're reaching his skin." Steel saw it happening. Dozens of larvae burrowing through the gaps in Breach's shoulder guard, disappearing into the wound that Wolf had inadequately sealed earlier. The demolitions expert fell to his knees, clawing at his armor, trying to get the creatures out. "Stitch!" Steel shouted. "I need you!" The medic was already moving, his stim-enhanced reflexes carrying him across the dock at a sprint. He dropped beside Breach, his medical kit coming open, hands moving with practiced precision despite the trembling. "Hold him down," Stitch commanded. Steel and Deadeye grabbed Breach's arms, pinning him as he thrashed. "I need to cauterize the wounds before the larvae reach his bloodstream. If they get into his circulatory system—" "Just do it," Breach gasped through gritted teeth. "I can feel them moving, under my skin, moving." Stitch pulled out a container marked with hazard symbols, medical-grade acid designed for cauterizing wounds in extreme situations. His hands were rock steady as he popped Breach's shoulder seal and exposed the wound beneath. Steel's stomach turned. The larvae had burrowed deep, creating tunnels through Breach's flesh. He could see them moving under the skin, pale shapes writhing like maggots. "This is going to hurt," Stitch said flatly. Then he poured the acid. Breach's scream echoed through the dock. The acid ate through the larvae, dissolving them with savage efficiency, but it also burned Breach's flesh, a controlled, precise destruction that was the only way to stop the infestation. Stitch worked with cold efficiency, his medic training overriding any squeamishness. He squeezed Breach's shoulder, forcing the dead larvae out through the entry wounds, then applied more acid. The smell was horrendous, burnt flesh and melted chitin mixing into a nauseating cocktail. "Almost done," Stitch muttered, his hands never stopping. "Just a few more. Hold him steady." Behind them, Hammer was fighting his own battle with the larvae. The big man had managed to seal his armor gaps with emergency sealant, trapping and suffocating the creatures before they could penetrate deeper. But Steel could see black spots on Hammer's armor where the acid had eaten through the ceramic coating. The mindbender's corpse suddenly convulsed. Its bloated skull split open, and more larvae poured out, these ones larger, more developed, with wings that buzzed like angry hornets. "Flying variants," Wolf warned. "They're going for exposed surfaces. Close your helmet vents." The flying larvae swarmed through the air, seeking any opening. Steel felt them impact his faceplate, their mandibles scraping across the reinforced polymer, trying to find purchase. One managed to squeeze through a micro crack in his neck seal, and he felt its acid touch burn his skin. "Got it!" Steel crushed the larva between his armored fingers, felt it pop like a grape. But more were coming, hundreds of them, attracted by the carbon dioxide of their breathing. "Stitch, status," Steel demanded, batting away more flying larvae. "Almost there." Stitch applied one final application of acid, then pulled out a trauma sealant. He sprayed Breach's entire shoulder, creating a biofoam that hardened instantly, sealing the wounds and suffocating any remaining larvae. "Done! He's clear!" Breach slumped in their grip, his face pale but conscious. "Thanks, Doc." "Thought I was done." "You're not done until I say you're done." Stitch was already checking his scanner, looking for any larvae that had escaped his treatment. "You're going to have scars that'll make horror stories jealous, but you'll live." "Formation," Steel ordered, pulling the team together. They formed a tight defensive circle, backs together, facing outward against the swarms. "Hammer, you functional?" "Mostly," Hammer replied, though his movements were slower than usual. "Lost some seals, got some acid burns, but I can still swing a hammer." The flying larvae continued their assault, but the team's combined defensive posture was holding. Every gap sealed, every opening covered. And slowly, the swarm began to thin, the creatures exhausting themselves against armor they couldn't penetrate. That's when Steel's HUD flickered in a way it never had before. Lines appeared in his vision. Not tactical overlays, but something else. Trajectories, predictions. He saw Deadeye's hand moving to swat a larva before the medic actually moved. saw Breach shifting his weight to maintain balance before the demolitions expert began the motion, saw Wolf ducking a flying larva 3 seconds before it reached him. He was seeing the future, or rather, his mutation-enhanced reflexes were processing probabilities so fast it felt like precognition. "Boss?" Deadeye's voice cut through his distraction. "You okay? You just went very still." Steele blinked and the lines faded. I'm fine. The infection. It's progressing. My HUD is showing things that haven't happened yet." "Enhanced temporal processing," Wolf said, his scientific mind immediately analyzing. "The Crimson virus is rewriting your neural pathways, increasing processing speed to superhuman levels. You're not actually seeing the future. You're calculating it so fast it feels that way." "Is that going to get worse?" Steele asked, not sure he wanted the answer. "Almost certainly. As the infection progresses, your enhancements will become more pronounced. The suppressors only slow the transformation, they don't stop it." The last of the flying larvae fell, their brief life cycles exhausted. The dock fell silent except for the team's labored breathing and the drip of acid eating through metal. Steele checked his chronometer. Hour 12:47. Then it jumped. Hour 13:14. They'd lost more time to psionic interference, or gained it. Increasingly, the distinction didn't matter. "Everyone, equipment check," Steele ordered. "I want damage reports. Be honest. If your seals are compromised, speak now. We can't afford surprises." "Hammer here. Multiple seal breaches, acid burns on my left side. I can fight, but I'm breathing the fog now." "Breach. Shoulders wrecked, but Stitch patched it. I'm down to 1 working arm, no ammunition, and my demo supplies are gone." "Deadeye. Seals are intact, but I've been out of ammunition since the server room. I'm basically a spotter now." "Stitch. Functional, but the combat stim is burning through my system faster than expected. I've got maybe 2 more hours of enhanced performance, then I'm going to crash hard." "Wolf. Civilian suit is holding, but barely. I'm not designed for combat operations. I'm slowing you down." Steele did the math. Half his team was effectively unarmed. Their medic was running on borrowed time. Their scientist was deadweight in a fight. And he was developing mutations that could turn him into what they were fighting against. "We're 15 kilometers from the evacuation corridor," Steele said, pulling up his tactical map. "According to this, the loading dock has a vehicle bay, old transport trucks that service the complex. If any of them still have fuel, we could cut our travel time in half." "And if they don't have fuel?" Hammer asked. "Then we walk. Either way, we're not staying here." Steele looked at the mindbender's corpse, already beginning to decay into black sludge. "The network knows we're alive, knows we're heading for extraction. Every minute we waste is a minute they use to prepare." "Boss," Deadeye pointed to something near the vehicle bay entrance. "Those look like fresh tire tracks. Someone's been using the vehicles recently." Steele studied the tracks. Recent, deliberate, leading both into and out of the bay. "Survivors?" Breach suggested hopefully. "Or something wearing survivor faces," Stitch countered grimly. "Only one way to find out," Steele decided. "Stitch, you're on point with me. Your enhanced reflexes give us early warning. Deadeye, you help Wolf. Hammer, you and Breach watch our 6. They moved toward the vehicle bay, leaving the loading dock's carnage behind. The mindbender's corpse continued to dissolve, its bloated skull collapsing into puddles of black ichor that the parasitic larvae fed upon, creating a self-sustaining cycle of consumption. Steele's HUD flickered again, showing him probability lines, the team entering the vehicle bay, finding trucks, facing whatever horror waited for them. The mutation was accelerating, his perception shifting into something beyond human. "Boss," Stitch said quietly, walking beside him. "When I looked at your eyes just now, for a second, they reflected light wrong, like a cat's eyes in darkness." "The infection," Steele confirmed. "It's changing us, all of us." "How much time do you think we really have?" Stitch asked, "before the suppressors fail completely?" Steele checked his chronometer. Hour 13:22. The timer says about 11 hours, but with the temporal anomalies, the psionic interference, the acceleration from stims and injuries, your guess is as good as mine. "Then we make every hour count," Stitch said firmly. They entered the vehicle bay, and Steele's enhanced perception immediately caught movement in the shadows. Something large, something metal, something that had been waiting for them. His HUD drew lines into the future, showing him multiple possible outcomes of the next few seconds. In one future, they died. In another, they survived. And in a third, Steele saw himself becoming something else entirely. Something that wasn't quite human anymore. "Contact," he whispered, his carbine coming up despite being empty. Whatever was in the vehicle it knew they were coming. And it was ready.
Thank you for listening. New chapters will be released daily on the channel. This audio material was produced exclusively for the Section 56 channel. All rights reserved.